What if an entire country shut itself off from the world? No travel, no foreign influence, no way out. And if you tried to leave, you could be executed. This wasn't a myth. This was Japan. From 1603 to 1868, Japan entered a period known as Sakoku, a time of total isolation. While revolutions shook Europe, while empires rose and fell, Japan turned inward and created one of the most unique societies in human history. But how did this happen? To understand, we need to go back to a time of chaos. In the 1400s, Japan was torn apart by war. Powerful warlords fought endlessly for control. Then came a man who would begin to change everything. Oda Nobunaga. Ruthless, brilliant, relentless. He started the unification of Japan. After him, another leader rose, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. By 1590, Japan was finally united. But peace didn't last long. When Hideyoshi died in 1598, he left behind a young son too young to rule. So 5 powerful men were appointed to govern in his place. One of them would change history forever, Tokugawa Ieyasu. At first, he played the game. But behind the scenes, he was building power. Strategic marriages, political alliances, carefully planned moves. Everyone could see it. He wasn't waiting to serve the heir. He was preparing to take control. Tension exploded in the year 1600. 2 massive armies faced each other in what would become the most decisive battle in Japanese history, the Battle of Sekigahara. In just one day, everything changed. Ieyasu emerged victorious. His enemies were crushed, their lands seized, and with that, he became the most powerful man in Japan. In 1603, the emperor gave him a title, shogun. But make no mistake, the emperor had the title. Ieyasu had the power. He established his government in a small fishing town, Edo. Today, we know it as Tokyo. At first, Ieyasu welcomed foreign trade. Portugal, Spain, England, the Netherlands. Guns, goods, knowledge flowed into Japan. But then something changed. He began to see a threat, not from weapons, but from ideas. Christian missionaries were spreading a new belief system, a belief system that didn't answer to him. To Ieyasu, this wasn't religion. It was danger. So he acted. Foreign influence was restricted. Christianity was suppressed. And under his grandson, Tokugawa Iemitsu, Japan took things even further. Borders were sealed. No Japanese could leave. No foreigner could enter. If you left the country, you might never come back alive. Only a tiny artificial island in Nagasaki Dejima was allowed limited trade, and only with the Dutch and Chinese. Japan had officially closed itself off from the world. But isolation wasn't enough. To maintain control, the Tokugawa shogunate built a system so strict it shaped every part of life. Society was divided into classes. At the top, samurai, warriors, enforcers, elite, below them farmers, then artisans, then merchants, and at the very bottom, those considered untouchable. You couldn't move between classes, not by effort, not by talent. You were born into your role, and you stayed there. Samurai made up less than 7% of the population, but they held power. Farmers made up 80%, but they carried the burden. Heavy taxes, hard labor. In some cases, they gave up nearly half their harvest. And yet something unexpected happened. Peace. For over 250 years, Japan experienced one of the longest periods of peace in its history. No major wars, no foreign invasions. And in that peace, culture exploded. Cities grew. Edo became one of the largest cities in the world. Osaka turned into a commercial powerhouse. Kyoto remained the cultural heart. Art flourished. Kabuki theater, haiku poetry, woodblock prints. Even samurai who weren't supposed to attend theaters snuck in disguised. That's how powerful the culture became. Merchants, once at the bottom of society, began to grow rich, very rich. And that created a problem. Because the samurai, the ruling class, were becoming poor. Their income depended on rice. But the economy was changing. Farmers began growing cash crops. Trade increased. Money, not rice, became power. And the balance began to crack. Peasant uprisings increased. Samurai fell into debt. The government struggled to maintain control. Then, in 1853, everything changed. A fleet of American ships appeared off the coast of Japan. Black ships, massive, armed, unignorable. For over 200 years, Japan had shut out the world. Now, the world was knocking, and Japan couldn't ignore it anymore. Pressure mounted. Unrest grew. Samurai turned against the shogunate. And in 1867, the Tokugawa era came to an end. The emperor, once a figurehead, was restored to power. Japan opened its doors and stepped into a new era. But the legacy of the Edo period remains, a society built on order, isolation, culture, and control. It was a world cut off from everything, yet somehow it thrived. And maybe the biggest question is this: what can we learn from a society that chose to turn away from the world? If you found this story fascinating, there's so much more to uncover. History isn't just the past, it's the blueprint of the future.